The stream whispered softly through the rocks. And then a shadow stepped into the edge of my firelight. It was late evening when I reached the clearing. A narrow stream cut across it, glinting in the fading light. The spot felt perfect. A place to rest after hours of hiking with heavy gear. I set up my tent, lit a small fire, and sat down to eat. The air was cool, the sound of the water soothing. For a time, I allowed myself to believe I was alone. But then, I felt it, that sharp prickling on the back of the neck, the instinct that says you're being watched. I tried to ignore it. I stirred the fire, forced myself to chew my food, told myself it was just nerves. The woods around me were still, too still. For a moment, I thought I saw movement between the trees. Just a flicker, a darker patch of shadow. I lifted my flashlight, sweeping the beam across the branches. Nothing, only silence. I sat back down, but the unease only grew. The firelight flickered low, and that's when I noticed him. At the edge of the clearing, a man, tall, thin, his clothes dark and loose. His face was hidden in shadow, but I knew he was staring at me. My heart thudded painfully. I froze, unable to move, my breath shallow. I called out. My voice cracked, but I forced the words. "Who's there?" No answer. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, silent. Little did I know, that silence would be worse than any threat. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it straight at him. The beam caught him fully now. Pale skin, hollow cheeks, eyes dark and fixed on mine. He didn't flinch, didn't turn away. And then he stepped backward, slowly, into the trees, until the dark swallowed him whole. I sat frozen for what felt like forever, gripping the flashlight so hard my hand ached. The woods gave no sound, no hint of movement. But I knew he was still there, waiting. I couldn't take it. I stamped out the fire, shoved my things into my pack, and ran. My flashlight shook wildly across the trail, branches clawing at my arms as I pushed forward. I didn't care about the noise, didn't care if he heard me. All I wanted was out. When I reached my car, I slammed the door shut and locked it, chest heaving. The headlights cut across the forest, and for a second, I saw him again, standing between the trees, watching. I drove until the forest was gone, until only pavement stretched ahead. But even now, years later, that image burns in my mind. The man in dark clothes, standing in silence, waiting for someone like me to come back. The fire was small, but its glow felt like a shield against the dark. And beyond that fragile circle of light, something stood waiting. I had planned this trip to escape the noise of everyday life. Just me, the woods, and a weekend of quiet. The clearing I chose was perfect. Flat ground, a small stream nearby, and trees tall enough to block the wind. By late afternoon, I had pitched my tent, gathered wood, and lit a fire. The flames crackled, chasing away the chill of evening. For a while, it felt perfect. I ate, leaned back against my pack, and stared at the stars emerging between branches. But then, the night settled in too heavily. The forest around me grew unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no rustle of animals, just the pop and hiss of firewood. I told myself it was fine. Silence was normal this deep into the woods. I tried to relax, but the feeling of being watched gnawed at me. For a moment, I thought it was my imagination. Just the shadows dancing, making me nervous, but then came the sound. A faint crack of a branch, a deliberate step on dead leaves. I froze. My flashlight was beside me. I reached for it slowly, not wanting to make a sound. The breathing firelight flickered against the trees. My ears strained. Another step, closer. And then, when I shined the light, he was there, a man, standing between the trees, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes, perfectly still. His face was pale in the beam, but I couldn't make out his eyes. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. My chest tightened. I shouted something. Words I can't even remember. But he didn't react, didn't flinch. After a moment, I lowered the light. When I raised it again, he was gone. Little did I know, that wasn't the end. The forest stayed silent, but now every second dragged. I swore I could see him at the edge of my vision. A shape among the trees, always just beyond the light. Sometimes left, sometimes right. Always there. I added more wood to the fire, desperate to keep the light alive. I didn't dare sleep. Hours passed, the flame shrinking lower, the shadows creeping closer. Finally, I made my choice. I couldn't stay. I grabbed my bag, stomped out the fire, and sprinted toward the trail. My flashlight beam shook wildly across branches and roots. Every step felt like something was chasing me. When I reached my car, I slammed the doors shut and locked them. My hands trembled as I turned the key. Headlights cut through the trees, and for just a second, I saw him again, standing at the edge of the forest, watching. I drove until the trees disappeared behind me, my chest heaving, my throat dry. I never camped there again. But some nights, when I wake from shallow sleep, I swear I can still feel it. That same heavy stare from the dark. As if the man by the campfire had found me again. The night was black and silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. And then, footsteps began circling my tent. I had gone camping alone, something I'd done before and always enjoyed. Solitude in the forest had a way of clearing the mind. That evening, I set up my small tent in a clearing near a ridge. The air was crisp, the fire warm, and the world seemed calm. By midnight, the flames had died down to glowing embers. I zipped myself into the tent, slid into my sleeping bag, and let the darkness swallow me. But then, I woke. My eyes snapped open, though I didn't know why at first. The night was still. My breath clouded inside the tent, and then I heard it. A footstep, heavy, deliberate, pressing down into the earth just outside the thin layer of fabric. I held my breath. Another step followed, then another, slow, steady, circling. For a moment, I told myself it had to be an animal, a deer maybe, or a bear, but no. The rhythm was wrong, too careful, too precise. The steps were evenly spaced, moving in a perfect circle around me. I lay still, every nerve in my body alive with fear. The crunch of leaves grew closer, then drifted farther, then came close again. Whoever was out there, they were walking around and round, and then they stopped. The silence was worse. I strained my ears waiting. Seconds passed like hours. My throat burned with the need to breathe quietly. Little did I know, the night would not end in silence. The steps began again, this time slower, heavier, closer. They pressed into the soil right beside my head, separated from me only by a sheet of fabric. I wanted to scream, to bolt out of the tent, but my body refused to move. All I could do was listen, trapped in that thin cocoon of nylon, as the unseen figure circled me again and again until exhaustion finally pulled me into a shallow, broken sleep. When morning light crept in, I unzipped the tent with shaking hands. The clearing looked the same. The fire pit was cold, the sky pale, but the ground told a different story. All around my tent, in a perfect ring, The earth was pressed with deep footprints. Human, bare, too large to be mine. They traced the same circle I had heard all night. I packed in silence, every muscle trembling. I didn't eat, didn't stop for water. I carried my gear back to the trailhead in record time, never once daring to look behind me. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can hear them again. Those slow, deliberate steps. The sound of someone circling, waiting for me to move. The pond was small, quiet, and hidden deep in the trees, but no matter how far I walked, it was always waiting for me. It started as a simple afternoon hike. I followed a narrow path I hadn't tried before, the kind that looked forgotten, overgrown, roots twisting across it, branches clawing at my arms as I pushed deeper into the forest. After what felt like an hour, the path opened into a clearing. There it was. A small pond, still as glass, reflecting the grey sky above. I paused at the edge, staring at my warped reflection in the water. But then, the silence hit me. No frogs croaking, no insects buzzing. Even the trees seemed to lean in close, as if they were listening. I tried to shake it off. I dropped my pack, gathered some sticks, and built a small fire beside the water. As the flames rose, the air felt warmer, safer. I ate, stretched out, and told myself this would be my camp for the night. For a moment, it almost felt peaceful. But as the fire sank lower, I heard something. Soft, subtle. The faint sound of movement in the underbrush. It circled the clearing, never coming too close, never showing itself. Just watching, my flashlight beam caught nothing but trees. Yet the sound continued. Crunch, stop, crunch, stop. I didn't sleep. Not really. I sat beside the dying fire until dawn. When morning came, I decided I'd had enough. I packed quickly, chose a different direction, and walked fast. The forest seemed endless, stretching in every direction. But I told myself I'd find the main trail soon. Little did I know. When the trees finally thinned, I stepped into another clearing and froze. The pond, the same one, the same crooked branch leaning over the water, the same ashes from last night's fire still smoldering faintly in the grass. My chest tightened. I had gone in a straight line. There was no way I should have ended up back here, but I did. I tried again. I marched faster, turning sharply this time, keeping the sun to my left. Hours passed. My legs burned, my throat dry. Finally, the woods opened again. The pond, waiting for me. By now, the sky was darkening. My stomach twisted with dread. No matter where I went, the forest folded back on itself, pulling me here. Night fell quickly and the air grew colder. I lit another fire, though my hands shook. The sound returned, that circling, steady movement, always just out of reach. The fire flickered low, the shadows stretched longer, and I knew I wasn't leaving. The forest had me now. Each time I tried to escape, it brought me back to the same pond, the same circle of trees, the same unseen thing watching from the dark. I never saw it step forward. I never saw a face. All I had was the sound, the circling, the endless loop. And in my heart, a single thought took root. This place doesn't let people go. The forest had never felt so quiet. No birds, no wind, not even the rustle of leaves. And yet, I could feel something moving with me, always just out of sight. It was supposed to be a simple hike. I had been on this trail before, winding through tall pines, down to a small lake that glimmered like glass in the sunlight. A place of peace, a place I thought I knew well. But then, when I reached the lake this time, The world felt wrong. The air was heavy, the trees too still, and my reflection on the water seemed to ripple even when I hadn't moved. I shook it off, telling myself it was just the weight of silence. I stayed a while, tossed a few stones into the water, and then decided to head back. For a moment, the path felt familiar under my boots. But soon, I began to notice things I hadn't seen before. A crooked tree leaning over the trail. A fallen log with claw-like gouges in the bark. The ground itself seemed to tilt me back toward the lake. And then, there it was. The same water, the same trees, the same still reflection staring back at me. Little did I know, this would repeat again and again. No matter which path I took, no matter how far I walked, I always ended up standing at that same lake. The sun sank lower, shadows stretched long across the clearing, and the silence pressed in closer. I felt eyes on me, steady, unblinking. At the tree line, I saw it. A figure, black, still, as if carved from the air itself. My heart thudded. I turned away, tried a new path, forced myself to run until my lungs burned. But there it was again, the lake, the same glassy water, the same figure. Standing closer this time. Night fell fast. The moon cast silver light across the surface of the lake, and the figure no longer stayed at the edge of the trees. It stood among the shadows, waiting, watching. I never found my way out. The trail betrayed me, folding back on itself, leading me in endless circles. The forest had made its choice, and the last thing I remember was standing by the lake, my reflection beside that figure. Though I was standing alone, abandoned camp and notebook, the trail was quiet, too quiet, as if the woods themselves were holding something back. And then, I stumbled onto a campsite that should not have been there. It had been a long day of hiking. The air was cool, the ground damp from recent rain, and I had been moving deeper into the forest than I had planned. I wasn't worried. I had food, water, and enough daylight left. Or so I thought. But then, through the trees, I spotted it. A clearing. Not mine. Not marked on any map. A campsite. At first I thought it might still be in use. A fire ring, half collapsed. A tent frame with torn fabric sagging down. Bits of trash scattered among the weeds. But when I stepped closer, the silence pressed in tight. Whoever had been here hadn't left recently. For a moment, I considered turning back. My instincts told me this place wasn't right, but curiosity pushed me forward. I searched the remains, rusted cooking gear, an old canteen, the bones of a camp chair, and then I saw the backpack. It was slumped against a tree, mold creeping across the fabric. I hesitated, but something about it pulled me closer. With stiff hands, I unzipped it. Inside were scraps of clothing, ruined by damp, and at the bottom, a notebook. Little did I know. Opening it would be the worst mistake of my life. The pages were warped, stained, some unreadable, but the writing was frantic. The first entries were simple. Notes about hiking, distances traveled, landmarks spotted. Then the tone shifted. I think I'm lost. The trail keeps changing. At night, I hear footsteps circling the tent. The handwriting grew messier, the words darker. Something is following me. It waits until I stop, then breathes outside my tent. I tried leaving. No matter what path I take, I end up back at the same place. If someone finds this, I don't think I'll be here anymore. The last page, my blood ran cold. I can see it now, watching from the trees, waiting for me to write this down. If you're reading this, it knows you're here too. The ink was smeared at the end, as if the writer had been pulled away mid-sentence. I dropped the notebook, my heart hammering. Every sound in the forest seemed sharper, closer. My skin prickled. The silence was no longer empty. It was heavy, like someone was holding their breath nearby. I didn't pack the notebook. I didn't search further. I ran. Branches whipped against my arms, roots caught my feet. But I didn't dare slow down. And yet, the feeling of being watched never left. Even as I reached the trailhead, even as I locked myself in my car, even as I drove miles away from that forest. That night, when I finally collapsed into bed, I swore I could hear it again, that slow, heavy breathing. Just outside my window, it began like any other quiet night in the woods. The fire had burned low, the last embers glowing faintly red beneath the ashes. The forest around the cabin was still, too still. Not even the whisper of leaves carried in the air. Inside, we sat together, trying to keep warm, the wind rattling faintly at the wooden shutters. It should have been peaceful, but there was something in the silence that pressed too heavy, like the air itself was waiting. Then came the sound. A slow inhale, a long exhale. Not ours, not from inside. It drifted from just beyond the window, steady, heavy, like someone standing only inches away from the thin wall of the cabin. We froze. Each of us listened. It came again, in and out, like a chest expanding, like lungs filling with air. But the breaths were too deep, too deliberate, as if whoever, or whatever, it was wanted us to hear. But then, the sound moved. It shifted from the left window to the right, circling the cabin with slow, patient steps. The breaths never broke rhythm. We held our own without realizing, afraid even the sound of us breathing would give something away. Little did we know, it wasn't circling at random. It was counting. The steps stopped at the door. The air felt thick. The wood groaned under the faintest pressure, as if something leaned close, pressing its face against it. Then we heard it again, a drawn-out inhale, a longer, rougher exhale. We whispered among ourselves, trying to decide whether to hide, to run, or to pretend we weren't there at all. But before anyone could move, the doorknob rattled, slowly, patiently, then stilled. Seconds stretched into minutes. No one dared to blink. And then, nothing. The breathing was gone. The night fell silent again. But the silence wasn't relief, it was worse, because silence meant it could be anywhere. Behind the cabin, on the roof, or waiting just outside the window, its mouth inches from the glass. Hours passed before daylight finally broke through the trees. When we gathered the courage to check, there were no footprints, no broken branches, no sign of anyone ever being there. And yet, the smell of warm breath still lingered in the air.